Finally, I've edited and posted my footage from this year's Rival Run Weekend Challenge. Star Wars Rival Run! Here we go! All right, Ronnie Cruz here with another episode, Disney/Star Wars. This footage is from this year, 2019's Rival Run Weekend Challenge, the Star Wars race that happens every year at Disney World Orlando. Now, before I get into the actual race, just a little bit of background about this particular race weekend. The Rival Run, actually, this race here on the East Coast in Orlando used to just be the Dark Side Challenge. It was separated into two different race weekends. The Light Side Challenge, which used to happen on the West Coast in Anaheim, and then the Dark Side Challenge, which of course was here in Orlando on the East Coast. But because of all the construction that's been happening over the last few years in Anaheim, they've foregone all the races indefinitely on the West Coast. And so they combined the Star Wars races into one challenge weekend, the Light Side and the Dark Side, calling it the Rival Run Weekend. All right, so coming into race weekend, if you've never ran a Disney race before, it's, for me, the most fun experience when it comes to racing. I've always been a runner, but I really fell in love with long distance running after my first Run Disney weekend here in Orlando. It's just such a fun experience. Now, the weekend starts off at the Race Expo, one of my favorite aspects of the entire weekend. There's so much merchandise, there's so much things to see, and of course you have to go there to register anyway, so I'm always cruising the expo floor looking for new products, looking at new gear. I actually end up going to the expo after every race just as a place to hang out, no matter how many times I've already been there. They serve beer and drinks, so how can you go wrong? Now, this year's Rival Run Challenge started off a little dicey. On the first morning for the 5K, there was a massive electrical storm. So they asked us to actually leave all the corrals. And by this time, the race was about to start. So we had the choice of either waiting in the car or waiting it out at Epcot, which was then, of course, at that time still closed. A lot of us waited in the electric umbrella. There was that other empty building whose name escapes me right now, but we ended up having to wait a couple of hours until the storm blew over. And it was really quite an experience. I mean, there was thousands of people at this race, and we were all there just trying to figure out what the heck was gonna happen. Eventually, the storm did blow over. By the time we got out there, it was still kind of raining, so they weren't even doing corrals. It was just whenever you get to the start line, just go. And so yeah, it was kind of sloppy, it was kind of slippery and messy and chilly for me. I don't like to run in cold rain. It wasn't until when the sun came up that the rain actually started to die down and it started to warm up. So yeah, it was a little hairy on that first day, but you know what? Everybody still had a good time. There were some people who decided not to run the race that day and then went on to complain about not getting their medal, which doesn't make any sense to me. Sure, they paid for registration, but they chose not to run the race. In my opinion, you gotta at least give an effort. Disney does everything they can to make concessions, and that's the cool thing about Disney, right? Now, the next day for the 10K and then the day after that for the half marathon, everything was great. The weather was phenomenal. And that's just the beauty of Disney races. No matter what conditions is happening with the weather or anything like that, it's always a tremendous experience. It's always incredibly fun. You get all kinds of picture opportunities, photo ops, there's cosplayers that aren't even a part of Disney. They're just local cosplay groups that show up and do photos with the runners. A big portion of the courses, especially on the shorter races, are through the actual parks. So there's a lot to see. There's a lot to take in. There's a lot to be engaged with. There's a lot to be distracted by. There's music. There's entertainment. There's big LED screens that show the movies. And I mean, it's just a tremendous amount of fun. And of all the Disney events, the Star Wars one obviously is my favorite. Oh, and not to mention, people dress up for these things. Like, there are people who are so dedicated to this thing that they'll run an entire half marathon in full costume. It's absolutely bonkers. I can't even keep my clothes on in a race, let alone a full costume. So it's just a good old time. And the thing is, like, you can run it competitively if you want, but I think the main point of these Run Disney events is just to have fun. And really, that's what I love most about it. These events are so engaging and so fun that it brings people out, it gets them active. People who otherwise wouldn't have ran a 5K race or a 10K race or even a half marathon or a full marathon for the Disney Marathon weekend. Because it's Disney and because it's fun, it just gets people involved. And that's what I really love. It gets people active, it gets people engaged, it gets people out and moving. Oh yeah, and the medals are freaking awesome. So if you've been thinking about running a race, whether it's a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, or even a full marathon, I highly encourage you to do a Run Disney race as your first one. Yeah, I know a lot of people have said that the Run Disney racers are more expensive than other races, but it's Disney. You're getting the best of the best in terms of entertainment. You won't even notice that you ran a half marathon by the end of it. So for me, it's totally worth it, especially the Star Wars Rival Run weekend. So that's that. Hope you guys enjoy this video. If you liked it, hit me with a thumbs up and a subscribe. And if you haven't seen any of my previous Disney stuff, check it out here on my channel. But beyond that, we'll catch you next time. You guys stay tuned. And until then, may the Force be with you.